between you and us. And may it be your will before you, our God and the God of our Father, that you will awaken and prepare our hearts to love and revere you. And may you listen to our utterances and open our closed heart to the hidden studies of your Torah. And may our study be pleasant before your place of honor, as the aroma of sweet incense. And may you emanate to us light from the source of our soul to all of our being. And may the sparks of your holy servants, through which you revealed your wisdom to the world, shine. May their merit, and the merit of their fathers, and the merit of their Torah and holiness, support us so we shall not stumble through our study. And by their merit enlighten our eyes in our learning. As it is stated by King David, the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes, so that I will see wonders from your Torah. Because from his mouth God, YIRAH, gives wisdom and understanding. May the utterances of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart find favor before you, God, YIRAH, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen.
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 Blessings, everybody. So, in order for us to fully understand and grasp the concepts here in VAYISHLACH, and these are the kings, I sent in a picture so we can have further context as to what exactly is going on here. So, if you guys will just avert your attention real briefly, this is from Apples from the Orchard, and it's quoting the ARI, and it says, Bereshis, bara Elohim et hashamayim v'charetz. It says in the beginning, an example in the power of Ima Vatsilos. Elohim created, an example Ima of Berea created. The heavens, an example Zaron Pen of Berea. And the earth, an example the Nukva of the Zaron Pen of Berea. This is the sod of why it says Ha-shamayim and Ha'aretz, as opposed to Shamayim and Eretz. Then it explains, the Torah then proceeds to discuss the elevation of the 7 kings of Edom, who died, for as it is known, remnants of these kings exist in every world. The portion that we're discussing in VAYISHLACH is called, and these are the kings. So to give one more piece of the context to it, it states here on page 10, and I'll give you guys the exact citation from Apples from the Orchard. The ARI states here that, and this is the sod, v'zesod et hashamayim v'atcharetz shechem, hazein melachim shechaya bechem hashvera. That these are the 7 kings that died. So the term the heaven and the earth alludes to the 7 kings that died. This is an incredibly important understanding to have. I cannot overstate the importance of having a firm understanding of what the 7 kings actually refer to at the highest level, because one cannot really understand anything at the highest levels of the Kabbalah without understanding what these 7 kings of Edom are. And because they are exclusively expounded upon in the Zohar and the Lurianic corpus, which most of the Lurianic corpus, as many of you know it, is not available to the Western world because there's a language barrier. Most of the Western world doesn't know Hebrew unless you're a Jew. And some of those writings that further expound the matters, example Emek HaMelech and others, are written in Aramaic. And as a result of that, there's an even further barrier because many people who can read Hebrew can't read Aramaic. And so to really understand the anything really, one must have a firm grasp of the understanding regarding the 7 kings of Edom. In fact, it's so important that the Arizal literally opens up Bereshis discussing the 7 kings of Edom and describes V'charetz and the earth, an example the kings, because as we know, the earth is Malkut, and the king means Melech, which is all qualities of Malkut. And it reads, V'charetz chayta tov v'bach v'chashek al pnei tehom, that the earth was void and formless, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, describing the destruction of the kings. This is why the word v'choshek, in darkness, al pnei tehom, was upon the face of the deep. The Sophite letters spell the word kalim. That means to say the word vessel. signifying that the vessels were destroyed. And it doesn't just say the earth, it says Vecharetz, where Vav are the 6 of Zeranpin and He is the Nukva. So that's an important understanding, because essentially everything that is inside of the Lurianic corpus has to deal with the kings of Edom. In fact, they are the main purpose of the entire Lurianic Kabbalah. In fact, the rectification of these kings is Geula, is the redemption. The redemptive process is the completion of the rectification of these kings. So to understand them is beyond important, to say the very least. One cannot really enter into the Kabbalah without firmly understanding what these are. So now that I've explained the position of the Arizal, we'll go back into what it says in Vayishlach, and it says, and these are the kings. So ve'ele hamelachim, and these are the kings. Now ve'ele, it doesn't just say, why say and these are the kings? Why add in this type of language? Those of you who have read the Zohar now through a complete cycle, we've gone through the Zohar many times, know that the word ele refers to the spirit of defilement. Every time that the word these are mentioned, it refers to the spirit of defilement. And ele, in particular, refers to Zeranpin and the Nukva, because Zeranpin, when it's out of its place, is called El. An example, when it's in the place of Chesed, it's called Chesed El, a loving God. And when it's in the sphere of Gevur, it's called El Gabor, a mighty God. And so then, therefore, the word these, ele, is formed from 2 words, El, meaning Zeranpin, and He, which is the Nukva. And so this is why it opens up and says, and these are the kings, because it is also written similarly, and these are the generations of the heaven and the earth in the day that they were created, Bahibaram. We read this at the beginning of chapter 2. And so what's the point of mentioning this? It's to teach you that the term heaven and earth refers to Ele. These are the heaven and the earth. And so therefore this refers to Zeranpin and Nukva. Zeranpin, which is called heaven, and Nukva, which is called earth. And this correlates exactly to what the Arizal was saying when he says, Hashemayim v'Charetz, these are the kings that died. It's very important to understand the destruction of the universe and the destruction that's taking place in the beginning. As you know, the husk precedes the fruit, and therefore the entire acts of creation of Bereshis is describing the husks. So, and these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom. Asher malacho ba'aretz Edom. Edom contains the word Adam. Edom means red, redness. And this hints to Gevura, as our sages said that the world was created through Gevura. And Edom contains the word Adam with the letter Vav. And that is to say the construction of Adam. And Adam in the sense that he was called Edom. Edom meaning red. This is what they said of David, that he was ruddy. And the same thing that they said regarding Esav and many others. Therefore, this is talking about Zeranpin. Before there reigned any king over the children of Israel, right? Lifnei melech livnei Israel. So what does it mean before there reigned any king over the sons of Israel? This was problematic. This was a very problematic. The reason why this is problematic is because this verse in the Torah doesn't logically make any sense. The explanation to this is that Israel simply didn't exist yet, and the land of Israel did not exist yet. And so then therefore at the time when this genealogy is being listed here, an example, Bereshis 36:31, before there was a king over the land of Israel, there wouldn't be a king over the land of Israel until the book of Judges. So then therefore, how in the world could the term before any king ruled over the land of Israel be incorporated inside of this passage unless they had knowledge that there was a king? And so secular scholars argue that Moses could not have written, Moshe Rabbeinu could not have written the Torah, and they cite this verse because it's problematic. It's problematic because how in Bereshis are you mentioning before these are the kings of the land of Edom before there was any king over the land of Israel? Well, the land of Israel has not been identified yet. how are you mentioning the land of Israel at all in Genesis? Because the land of Israel would not be shown until Moshe Rabbeinu was shown the land of Israel. Therefore, there really was no understanding of how the land of Israel could be identified, let alone how there could be a king there, unless the author knew that there was a king. And so therefore they argue that the Torah was written later. This is the secular standpoint. Although this standpoint is utterly rejected by those that are within the inner mysteries. And the reason why is because we're talking about Israel. And Israel, as you know, is written, I declared the end from the beginning. And so therefore the last word of the Torah is the word Israel. This is the first beginning. And this is why Bereshis begins with the letter Beit, which means second, two. And so then don't read Bereshis, read Beit, second, Reshit, creation. And this is the position of Rashi. Do not think that it is the first, but rather think in the process of the beginning. That is to say that it is not the first, as in the creation story is talking about the very first things that occurred, but rather think that Bereshis is occurring within the acts of creation. That means within the process of its unfolding. Because the first creation, as I said in the book of Isaiah, which quotes specifically, he declared the end from the beginning, he's hinting to the word Israel. We know this because the prophets were only reared and educated in the words of the Torah itself. They would not have been studying their own works because there was no book of Ezekiel and there was no book of Yeshayahu at the time of Yeshayahu, because Isaiah would have been studying from the Torah in their school of prophecy. So therefore, when he cited and quoted, he declared the end from the beginning, he's obviously talking about the word Israel, which is at the end of the Torah and is the real beginning. So Rabbi Yisa, okay, Rabbi Yisa began the discussion with the verse, "Behold, I will make you small among the nations." So this is our first clue. Hine katan. Behold, I will make you small. So what is katan? Katan alludes to Zeranpin. Zeranpin is called katan. And this is called Adam katan, the small man. Whereas the large one is called Adam gadol, the great man. Okay, and when it says amongst the nations, there are 70 nations. You are greatly despised. Obadiah 1:2. Come and behold, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, He divided the earth into 7 regions that correspond to the 70 ministers. This verse tells us that the earth was divided into 7 earths. And this is expounded and explained in exactly as I stated. V'charetz contains the letter Vav, like, and the earth is Vav, which means 6. And He, which is the Nukva for the 7th. And Eretz means the earth. So you don't read and the earth. Understand that this refers to 7 earths. And that these 7 earths specifically are these kings of Edom. And they are rendered Tohu v'bohu v'choshech opnei tohom. For those that have been more learned, you understand what the Talmud says about this matter, that Tohu v'bohu v'choshech opnei tohom correspond to the grades of the statue in the vision of Daniel, which is avodah zarah, meaning idolatry. Because Tohu v'bohu v'choshech opnei tohom are the levels of the Sita Achra. And so you need to understand that the 7 kings of Edom are tied inherently with the Sita Achra, meaning the other side. And so this is what it means, that it was divided into 7 regions, which are the 7 kings, and that every minister, all of the 70 ministers came into existence through those 7 kings. And this is exactly why he makes and wage war against the nations. The nations, because there are 70 in number, because that is the evil. People don't understand that the entire creation was rooted in evil. This is exactly why Ramchal says that the entire existence was for in order to bring into a place, into existence, a place for evil. And this thought process, which is the core of the higher levels of the Kabbalah, is exactly why there were restrictions and prohibitions away from people understanding it or studying it. Because you had to be at a certain spiritual maturity level to accept the real raw reality of the condition we live in. Because how do we explain the innate suffering that is occurring unless you understand that evil was brought forth? And this is alluded to explicitly, in which it's written, Bereshis bara, right? In the beginning created. The word bara is exactly as it is written, that I form peace and create bara, evil. Okay, this is exactly what Isaiah says. So the word bara is a direct allusion to the word evil, because that was the entire purpose. So when these kings shattered and created this Sita Achra, it generated from an intermingling of the Orlo Machshava, the thoughtless light, the mindlessness. It generated these 70 ministers. And these 70 ministers, which rule over the nations, entirely and culminate the domain that is called evil. And so you will read in the various writings of the Arizal and Chaim Vital and in the deep esoteric place of Lurianic Kabbalah that these 70 ministers um, form and create the level of evil entirely. So I may be able to find you guys a source for that, which is mentioned in there. But nonetheless, it is, as I've stated, that the Arizal states explicitly that the ministers, the 70 ministers, create the entire region of the other side, which is called the other side. So now we'll continue on with what it says here. All right. Appointed over the nations. These are the secret of the exterior. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Yisar, Malchus. That's because they're called the kings. So the way we understand the king is that we need to understand that Atzilus is covered by Beriah, and Beriah is covered by Yetzirah, and Yetzirah is covered by Asiya. Yetzirah is called the Ruach, and Asiya is called the Nefesh. Malkuth, the kings, are called the Nefesh, and they shattered, as I've explained. And this is exactly why it says Varuach Elohim Merchefet al Panei Chamayim, that the spirit, the Ruach of Elohim, because Ruach is the quality that was exposed when the external Kalim, being the level and aspects of the kings, the external vessels shattered, the Ruach remained vibrating above the waters of those destroyed vessels. And so that's because the Ruach was now exposed when the external vessels, which are the Malkus of every level, shattered, meaning the outer Kalim, or the outer husk, shattered. And so that's what it's trying to hint to. Each consisting of 10 and thereby totaling 70. The Holy One, blessed be He, appointed the 70 ministers over the 70 nations, each according to its worth. As it is written, when the Most High divided the nations into their inheritance, when He separated the sons of Adam, He set the bounds of His people according to the number of the children of Israel. This here is a citation for the proof of exactly what I'm saying. So this is from Apples from the Orchard, and I want you guys to reference this so we're all on the same page here. He states explicitly, if you guys will just avert your attention to the screenshot that I just sent. Okay. He states, each of the 70 angelic princes of the 70 nations of the world, who collectively constitute the realm of evil in its entirety. It's very important that at these levels we go according to straight paths and not fanciful delusions, and not, whatever it is that we want it to be. It's important that when we study the real levels, that we study them according to the true paths. And so when I'm telling you that this is the entire realm of evil, I'm not just making this up. I'm telling you exactly what is established by the highest Hachamim. There's no greater Kabbalist in the Arizal, and Chaim Vital is unchallengeable in terms of what is laid down here. So when the Arizal is telling you that the entire realm of the nations is the realm of evil, you need to ask yourself what's going on here. And I've already explained to you that the word bara means barare, means it created evil, because that's exactly what the beginning is describing, is the creation of evil. This is exactly why I've told you that Elohim is the ordinal value for Samael. And I know that makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable, but I would be doing a disservice if I curtail to your ego or the fragility of your mental state to make you feel good or comfortable by giving you a lie and telling you something that is not really there. Meaning that if I just conformed into feel-good language and tell you, oh, everything's okay, this is like this is like that, and lie to you instead of telling you what's really going on here, it only disservices you. It only disservices you. So it's important that we come to these understandings in a true way. And when it's apportioned to the number of children of Israel, our sages tell us that the nations, they were pointed to Gehinnom, that their entire portion is to Gehinnom, because it says the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. So the Talmud, they comment on this verse and they say, well, then who then inherits all the works of the nations? And they say Israel. Why do they say this? Because the promise to Avraham Avinu is that Israel Gilgals, they reincarnate. And so therefore the nations, they build stuff, and who inherits them? Israel. Why? Because Israel will reincarnate to inherit them. That was the promise of Abraham to Abraham. And this is the promise of the Torah, where it's written, every one of you are alive this day. Why is it written, every one of you are alive this day? This teaches you that every Jew reincarnates. And this is why we're spared and saved from Gehinnom. We're spared and saved from Gehinnom because of the covenant with God. God saves you from hell, and instead he reincarnates you. And so when he reincarnates you, Israel ends up inheriting everything the nations do. This is why it doesn't say according to this nation or that nation, but rather he says he set the bounds of the people, meaning all 70 people, the entire world, according to the number of the children of Israel, because in the future the nations will be destroyed. They'll be destroyed alongside the entire collective realm of evil, because in truth, they're all rooted in evil, and they have no idea that they're rooted in evil. They have no idea that the powers that are above them are really the entire domain and realm of evil, and that the central minister of their nations ultimately is in one of these forces of evil. And so these 70 forces of evil, and as it says, collectively is the totality of the realm of evil, is exactly what's at play here. So among all the ministers appointed over the nations, no one is as despised before the Holy One, blessed be he, as Asaph's minister. This is Samael. Samael, who is Pharaoh. Pharaoh is Samael, because Pharaoh identifies himself as Elohim. Samael is the one who wrestled with Yaakov, and he identifies himself as Elohim too. This is the sod of the verse. And for you have wrestled with Elohim and overcame. You wrestled with Elohim means you wrestled with Samael, because Samael was the one who wrestled with Yaakov. And he identifies himself as Elohim. Does not say Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. People need to be very careful. As I've explained to you in many places, that the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is never used in the acts of creation, because the world was not created through Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, it was created through Elohim. And this matter is beyond the scope of this conversation, but nonetheless, the minister over there, the name Elohim has the same ordinal value as the word Samael, as has been explained. Because Esau represents the side of defilement. Now, the side of defilement, Esau is Edom. Edom is another word for Rome. It's for Rome. This is why Christianity's center thing is Catholicism. And Catholicism is based in Rome. And they are 100% defiled. They desecrate the Torah in irrevocable ways. Their priestcraft actively do not deny God in his very first commandment. His very first commandment is be fruitful and multiply. They deny the very purpose of the human being, where God commanded us to be fruitful and multiply. They deny that. They deny that, and they take up vows of chastity. And the Shekhinah, as we just learned, rests in no place where there's no copulation, which means when a male and a female are not coupled together, the Shekhinah does not rest in that place. And the reason why is because it's written, and he created them, Elohim created them, B'Tselem, right? That created the man, Zekar v'Nukva, male and female. This teaches us that a person is not called Adam unless he is Zekar v'Nukva, male and female. Because this is the order of creation, and this was the will of God, and this is exactly how God manifested. And our purpose to be fruitful and multiply is denied by their priestcraft immediately, who none of them procreate and take out vows of chastity and all these other kinds of things, which is a straight affront to the God's creative purpose. The second thing they do is they constantly drink blood and eat human flesh, which is a complete desecration of the Torah. They say, drink this is my blood, and eat this is my body. This is Samael. This is Samael. This is all the flesh. What color is flesh? Take this, eat this is my flesh. That's the left column. It's red. Drink this is my blood. What color is blood? The Torah explicitly prohibits the drinking of someone's blood, and explicitly prohibits the eating of flesh. And so therefore their entire religion, which is a religion of defilement, defiles the individuals that are in it, because they constantly are enacting these rituals of cannibalism, which is a desecration of the Torah. It's 100% antithetical of the Torah. just on those points alone. So represents a sign of defilement, which is despicable for the Holy One Blessed be He. Esau's minister was issued from the small graves behind the millstones. Okay, from the emptiness of the red sides came the minister of Esau. From the emptiness of the red side. That means from the emptiness of the left column, because he ultimately personifies two qualities, Gevura and Hod. And Gevura, as we know, personifies the qualities of Din, which means judgment, and Pechad, which means fear, and is alluded to and empowered by the quality of Ma'adim, which means Mars. That is to say, the minister of Edom or Rome is Mars. Mars, ultimately, which is called the red planet, was a symbol of war, and bloodshed, because ultimately the minister of Mars, which is associated with the minister of Esau, is Samael. The angel of the planet Mars is Samael, and the central figure for the Roman armies, and the reason why they wore that red in their armies, was the red of the planet Mars. They were trying to invoke the energies and qualities of Mars, which is exactly why Edom or Rome was associated with Samael even in ancient times, because it's a one-to-one. Nonetheless, Samael emanated from the destruction of the left side, because the quality was not Gevura. Gevura means strength. Instead, when it was destroyed, meaning the shattering of that vessel, it became intermingled with the mindlessness. And strength intermingled with mindlessness becomes judgment. Because strength is grounded. It's a type of limiting force, a type of din, when it's limited and structured within the realm of holiness, and thus creates zeal, and holy zeal and strength, and the ability to stand up against evil. This is Gevura. However, when the vessel of Gevura was shattered, the attributes of this quality intermingled in with the mindlessness and created extreme forms of din, judgment, and extreme forms of pechad, which is terror and fear. And so then therefore we find that Samael embodies these things, and war embodies these things. So this is what it means, the emptiness of the red side, which is the left after the vessels were destroyed. The minister of Esau, therefore, and the reason why the minister is because it's written Varuach Elohim, the spirit of Elohim, vibrated over the waters. And so when the spirit was exposed, it was exposed to the mindlessness of the destroyed vessels, and it started creating all of these ministers. This spirit that was now exposed to the Sita Achra started creating these ministers. This is what is written. He makes the wind, the Ruach, the spirit, his Malachim, his angels. What this means when it says he makes the Ruach his messengers or his angels, is that from the Ruach, these angels came into existence. This was the intermingling of that quality called the Ruach, as it is written, Ruach Elohim Merachef and Opnei Chamayim, the spirit of God vibrated over the waters, intermingled with that thing called the waters. And the waters, of course, are the destroyed worlds. Therefore it is written, behold, I will make you small among the nations, you are greatly despised, which has the same meaning as upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. So when it says, behold, I will make you small amongst the nations, this is a very important thing, because now he's directing this towards Samael. You will be greatly despised. And ultimately, Samael is greatly despised amongst the nations, which has the same meaning of upon your belly you shall go, referring to the serpent. And dust you shall eat all the days of your life. Man is formed from the dust. I've explained this many times. What does the serpent eat? The answer is dust. And who is dust? The answer is man. Because it's written, man was formed from the dust. And this is the sod of the verse, and the earth will vomit out the shades of the dead. And this is for those who Gilgul, those who reincarnate, because this is the domain of Samael. This is why Malkut, the word Malkut, has the same numerical value as Samael and Nechash, Samael the serpent. Because this world, when it says vomits out the shades of the dead, what this means when the earth vomits out the shades of the dead, this is similar to a dog that vomits out what it eats just to return to its vomit and eat it again. This is very similar to how this earth is, which vomits out the shades of the dead, only for them to be eaten again. And so therefore in ancient times, this serpent was shown as a serpent eating itself. And the Zohar describes the serpent as having its tail in its mouth. This is exactly what the Sifra Desnudata states. that this is a serpent who has its tail in its mouth. So you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. So the word greatly, meod. Greatly, the term meod, for all of you that know what the 13th precept is, in the sections when describing precepts of the Torah, the 13th precept, which is meod, very, is melach hamavis, the angel of death. And so then therefore, when it says here, and the word greatly, or meod, which really means the angel of death, resembles the words, you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Now, you need to understand that cattle and beasts of the field refer to the demonic other side, because birds of the firmament refer to angels, and beasts of the field refer to the demons. And I've expounded this in many different places, especially in the commentaries, when discussing the cattle and the beasts of the field, and that these are in truth the demonic realm. And when man is ruler over the birds, it means he's ruler over the angels. And when he's ruler over the beasts, it means that he's ruler over the demonic. And as both of these two things answer to God, so too were they originally meant to answer to man, because man was commanded to walk in the ways of God. And the Zohar tells us, literally, by creating heavens and establishing earth. And we too were meant to make the Ruach into messengers, into angels, and so on and so forth. But we've fallen so far from that level of Kedusha that we're actually underneath the angels. Not only are we underneath the angels, we're actually underneath the demons. And Adam learned all his ways from the demons. This is exactly why when it says when he was removed from the garden, our sages tell us that he took after the ways of the animals. So he would see an animal doing something, and then he repeated and copied and did exactly what the animal did. So the primitive civilizations were formed according to the observations of the animal world around them. And we see this in the nations as well, where at the central root of many ancient civilizations are animal-headed deities and secrets behind the esoteric meaning behind animals, because they took wisdom mainly from the literal animals. So it states, come and behold within the lower grades. Again, this is all the Sita Acha. There are grades upon grades that are all different from each other, which means within the demonic realm. Yet they are both detached from and attached to each other in such a way that Malkuth of each of the grades is separated. Yet each Malkuth is interconnected to Malkuth. So what you need to understand is that, as I've explained, the kings died. So the upper Sphirot all have a Malkut. And when the kings died, it means that the quality, the external vessel of all of these upper grades shattered, and the collective totality of the upper grades shattered. And to what degree did they shatter? And the answer to that is all the way up into the world of Atzilus. And therefore, they all descended. And when they all descended, they gathered into Malkuth as we understand it, as the true Sephira of Malkuth, which is really an amalgamation of all the Malkuths. That is to say, when I say Malkuth, this is the sod of what's written. It's founded in wisdom or Chokhmah, is because the vessel within Chokhmah didn't shatter. But nonetheless, the Malkuth of Chokhmah, which we call the Nukva of Atzilus, which is Chokhmah, descended. Which is to say, the Malkuth of Chokhmah is the Chokhmah of Malkuth. And the same thing with the Bina of Malkuth is the Malkuth of Bina. And it is with every other single Sphirot. So that you should understand that there's a separation, Machloches, as I just stated, between all the Malkuths, and yet they're all within Malkuth. That is to say that each one of their breakings and shatterings happen from different grades and happen from different Sphira and points and levels within the divine hierarchy, and yet they all find themselves within side of Malkuth down below, whether in rectified or unrectified sense. We know in the context of our discussion here, and to this day, that it's in the unrectified sense, which means that although there are some parts that have been tikkuned and brought correction to, not all of it is corrected. So it says, this is what it means. They are detached, because obviously the Malkuth of Chokhmah is not the Malkuth of Bina. And so this is what it means, they're attached from each other. And so it says, yet each Malkuth is interconnected to Malkuth. That is to say that all of them descended after their either shattering or descent into the general sphera of true Malkuth, which we call, and it is an amalgamation of all the Malkuths of the divine hierarchy, which is why Malkuth is called a shining mirror. And it says it has nothing of its own because it doesn't really exist. It only exists as an amalgamation of all the other Malkuths that descended into it. That is to say, it's only a reflection of the amalgamation of what is above it, not existing really by itself. And we can learn something at the Atziluthic level. What we learn at the Atziluthic level is that reality, first off, why is Malkuth called a shining mirror? It's called a shining mirror because a mirror reflects light, right? It absorbs and reflects light. And when it says that Malkuth has nothing of its own, we learn another thing. By saying that Malkuth has nothing of its own, we learn from this at the Atziluthic level that reality is really colorless. We actually have no idea what reality even looks like. We don't know what anything looks like because all of what we're looking at is absorbed in refracted light. Because this reality, which is Malkuth, is called a shining mirror, it doesn't mean it in a figurative way, although it can be interpreted in a figurative way. It's very literal. This teaches us that this entire dimension we exist inside of, this, what we're interacting inside of right now, is only absorbed in refracted light. That's what we're viewing. When you look at something and you think it's red, or you think it's blue, or you think it's white, or you think it's whatever color, you're not really viewing what it actually looks like. You're only looking at an object in which is absorbed and refracted certain spectrums of light. Because the real reality of the situation is that white light, which is an entire spectrum of light, is blanketing everything. And we're not seeing the spectrum of light within white light. Instead, we're only seeing absorbed and refracted light in the objects which are likened to a mirror around us. So by that definition, we have no idea what reality looks like or even is. And this is very synonymous with graphics rendering in a program. It's the exact same concept behind rendering graphics inside of a program is exactly what this light absorbing and refracting is. So on an Atziluthic level, we can see exactly what Malkuth is in the sense of a shining mirror. It teaches us that what we're observing is absorbed in refracted light, which is a scientific fact. So moving forward, it states, this bond has one level of the central column. Each level contains 3 bonds. So one level of the central column simply means Malkuth, because Malkuth finds itself as one level of the central column. As the central column contains all 3 columns, each bond contains one crown, namely the crown referred to in the verse, the crown which his mother crowned him. And in every crown there is a singular force of command. So that crown, the Athara, sometimes is referred to Yisod, and in other places it refers to Keter. Right? So Keter Malkuth is what's written in the book of Esther. Keter Malkuth, because Keter means crowned. So Malkuth ascends to Kether, because that's where her origin was. And this is because the highest light, when it retracted itself into what we call Malkuth. Malkuth is the bottom point at the end. And this is why it's called Ani. When it says Ani Yudke Vavke, because Yudke Vavke we know is Zeranpin, and Ani is Malkuth. This is why it's called the Melech of Yudke Vavke, or the angel of God, because the Melech is Malkuth. All forms of Melech or Melach, angel, and kingship comes from the word Malkuth, which is the kingdom. And Ani, that is to say the word I, which is a name synonymous for Malkuth, is a saruf or permutation of the word Ein, which means nothing. This teaches us that Malkuth is really rooted in the Ein, at the highest level. And so therefore he's giving an allusion to the establishment of this crown. The force of command was assigned by being crowned from above, that's to say Keter, and assigned to descend until the stars and constellations are attached to it, that is to say Yisod and Zeranpin. And this is alluded to in the verse, I will lift up your name above the heavens. Stars and constellation, the Kochavim, when they use the term stars, they're talking about the visible lights movable in the sky. The word Kochav, which means star, also means planets. And these are the planets that are listed as the 7 double letters, which include the sun and the moon, because these are movable objects that we observe. The three mother letters personify the elements of the material reality. That is to say, energy, gases, liquids, and solids, which are Shin, Aleph, Mem, and Mem. Those are the mother letters, which personify these qualities of material existence. The seven double letters personify the seven movable lights in the sky, which are the moon, because we could observe that moving in the sky. The sun, we can observe that moving in the sky. Mercury, which we observe moving in the sky. Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. These are the seven double letters. And the constellations are the 12 elemental letters, because the constellations are derived according to elemental associations. That is to say, there are earth signs, water signs, air signs, and fire signs. And all of them are rooted according to the divisions of Aleph separates Mem from Shin, as it's been explained in other places. Therefore, Malkuth is called Et, Aleph to Tav. And I've explained to you the order of the 22 letters as relaying to this reality in our observable universe around us. That being the mother letters, or gases, energies, liquids, and solids, the components of material existence, the seven movable lights in the sky called Kochavim, and the 12 constellations. And these are three mother letters, seven double letters, and 12 elemental letters, or the 22 letters of the Holy Language. That's what it means to be crowned above and assigned and descend until the stars and constellations. That is to say, the seven of the double letters and the 12 of the elemental letters are united. And the word then is one. This is another explanation to this, is that the seven Kokhavim represent the seven Sphirot of Zeranpin, and the constellation corresponds to the sphere of Yisod, where the attributes of the constellations are associated. Every force of command in each of the three crowns contains one star and one constellation, because all the stars are connected to the upper grades. The answer to this is that the planets themselves are only external physical manifestations, like a branch from a tree, of the upper Sphirot, which are the source or Sherosh of it. That is to say, the internal design existing as an absolute potential. And these are what the Sphirot are. And they're called the Sphirot of the Matranita, because the word Chokhmah contains the words Koach Ma, which means the potential. Koach can mean power, but it can also mean potential. Ma of what? That is to say, the potential of that which will be. Thus, Chokhmah is a world of potential and is associated with the divine mind, but archetypally is associated with Atzilus, which means Atzil or emanate, because potentials emanate. And the entire purpose of the existence is to bring potentiality into actualization. And this occurs through a series of emanations and restrictions. So therefore, when it's stating here, that they're attached to the upper grades, it means to say that in the world of Asiya, which is this world, the world of action, the seven visible planets are rooted in the seven Sphirot, which they exist archetypally as a potential within the Atzil. And these ultimately are rooted within inside of the potential of the seven double letters, which are in the Word, because the Word has created everything. This is the secret of what is written. By the word of his mouth, he created the heaven and the earth. And this is why it's written, Vayomer Elohim Yehior Ve'Yehior. God said, let there be light, there was light. Because the creative force of God's emanation is the word, meaning the Lashon HaKodesh, the 22 letters. And so they are the root of all of the Sphirot, as it's been explained that the 22 letters are the 11 fronts and the 11 backs of the Sphirot. The Sphirot are thus, which we call the tree of life, are thus only a garment, a malbush, for the light of the 22 letters, which is the information, right, that the illimitable one has garbed itself in. This is the secret of what's written. He wraps himself in light. And this is also what is written, YIRAH Elohim et Ar Kitov, and God saw et, the light. It doesn't just say the light. It says et haor. Et is spelled Aleph Tav, because this is the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Therefore, the light is the 22 letters, Aleph through Tav, Et Ha'or. So when it says he wraps himself in light, you need to understand this as he wraps himself in the 22 letters. So that which is unknowable may become knowable through the vestment of the illimitable, garbing itself in information. Then this information is garbed in the sphirot, which give it form. And then those sphirot emanate into the world of creation, the defined thought forms, which are then formed and brought into actualization. The 7 planets, thus, that we see with the observable eye, are only but the emanated branch of the sphirot that are above it. And this is exactly what it says here, that they're connected to root above it, because all the stars are connected to the upper grades. And the constellations to the lower grades, each grade is crowned in certain places according to its individual worth. And each one of the planets personify one of these different aspects. Now, when you understand at the highest level that it is written man is a tree, and you understand that the form of the human body, which is the divine form in the image of God, then you understand that the human body is in the image of this tree of life, which are the sphirot. And thus, the planets were symbolized by these gods being in a human form, none of them looking alike, each one of them capturing the attribute or quality of its associated planet. So Mars was associated specifically wearing garments of war, and Venus or Aphrodite is shown wearing, usually her breasts are out, or she's wearing night garments, or so on and so forth, because she's personifying Hod, which is emotion, the emotion body. And so then, therefore, how we should view those things is that do not look at them in terms of individuals or people, but the real sode of the matter is that the form of those beings is really just the sphirot of that grade. So the female form, because the human body, again, is the tree of life, Venus is really just the sphirot of Hod, within inside of Hod. Because Hod has within inside of itself all of the sphirot. It takes the form of a tree, and the tree is, as it is written, man is a tree. Therefore, it takes the image of a human being. And so, therefore, the ancients depicted the stars as human beings. The simpletons interpreted this in a literal shot sense, that they were manifested beings. But the learned understood the deeper concept, that the figure of the human being was really just the arrangement of the sphirot of that grade, or of that quality. And the same thing comes down to the distribution and differentiation of their metals, which will be carried through the Middle Ages in terms of alchemy, so on and so forth, which many of these mysteries as well has been lost. For example, Saturn, being personified with time and death, is associated with the metal lead, because lead is toxic and poisonous and very dense, and you will die if you eat from lead. It's known for killing. The same reason why iron is associated with the metal of Mars, because Mars is the god of war, and iron was a metal used to make instruments of war. It's exactly why Venus is associated with the metal copper, and the central place of Venus's worship was a place called Cyprus, which means copper. And what's fascinating about this is the IUD used for birth control is actually a copper wire, because it turns out that the metal for Venus, ironically, which is copper, happens to be a spermicide. So it associates with that quality of love, so on and so forth. So when the grades diverge, they form a disrupting link until it is connected to its worthy place. And the aspects of the defiled grades of the left side all diverge into several ways and pass the aspect of the red gevurot. And that's because they're ultimately all on the left side, because the world's creation was through the quality of gevura. There's a deeper explanation for this. The deeper explanation for this matter, to understand it at a higher level, is to understand when we say that the world was created through gevura, it's in relation to the atik, because the arrangement of the sphere within inside of the atik greatly differs from the arrangement of the Sefirot as we associate them as here. And in the same likeness with a recline pin, and the arrangements there are also differ greatly with the arrangement as we understand them here. I'll give you an example of this. From our perspective, we say Abba and Ima is Hokmah and Bina. This is all suffices and is fine. However, in the Partsu theme of a recline pin, Abba and Ima personify his Chesed and Gevurah. And we know that Ima created without Abba, which is the quality again of Gevurah. And so then the destructions of all of the worlds are spoken of from the aspect of Gevurah, because Ima personifies the Gevurah of a recline pin. And a recline pin is the vested creative process of the Atik. With inside of the Atik's arrangement of the Sefirot, Tiferes, Chesed, and Gevurah personify a recline pin, while Netzach and Hod here personify Abba and Ima. The Yisod of the Atik personifies Zeranpin, and Malkuth still remains the same. Yet you'll find that this differs greatly according to the classical understanding as we view them. And that is dependent on whether or not we're viewing the Partsus in their interactions from the bottom up or viewing them from the top down. So it says that run from Bina, the secret of red, which is exactly why I said Ima created with Abba, and everything was in the quality of Bina. In the opening portion that we said, it says an Ima of Atzilus created, or it says an Ima of Beria created through the power of the Ima of Atzilus, which is to say that the term Ima was being used. This is exactly where the Gnostics came up with the idea that Sophia created without the pleroma, or without the fullness. This is exactly what the Zohar tells us in Book 1, where it says Ima created without Abba, because Elohim, which is the name personifying the sphere of Bina, is used throughout the acts of creation, but the name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is not. Book 3 of the Zohar tells us that if the world had been created through the quality of Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, it would have been enduring, but it is not. We also read that because Elohim has created it without Abba, the passage is titled, that I'm referring to in Book 3, it says, "Come and behold the desolations Elohim has sowed into the earth." So, and because Lower Gevurot are counted below by the thousands and myriads, then behold, I will make you small amongst the nations, you are greatly despised. Come and behold, and these are the kings that reign in the land of Edom. The land is the side of Esau's grade. And this refers to the Malkuth as it is in relation to the Sita Achra. As is written, Esau, who is Edom. Edom. And Edom is a term that's also used, as I've said, for Rome. All these kings came from that side of the unclean spirit. Before there reigned any king over the children of Israel, refers to these grades of Esau, which stand at the lower grades and are the first to be perfected. The reason Jacob said, "Let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before a servant," is that Esau's grades are first to enter and be perfected, for the lower grades are corrected first and the higher grades later. This is exactly why it says, "I will gather the nations," because Israel will experience no correction until the grades of Esau are corrected first. And this is exactly why it says, "I will gather the nations." And this is why in Tehillim 2 it says, I will give to you the nations as an inheritance, right? Because the lower grades must be corrected first. The husk must be corrected before the fruit can be corrected. The fruit refers to Israel, and the husk refers to the nations. This is an incredible key. And this is why at that time, when the sages and the Tanas describe what is Mashiach, I've explained to you Mashiach is the words Yesh Moach. Yesh means substance, and Moach means brain. It means the illumination of the brain. What is this substance? It says it is written Yesh Me'ain, substance from Ain, because they have to come to an understanding of the illimitable, which only comes about through the Lashon HaKodesh. As many of you have been familiar here with the concepts of Aleph separates them from Shin and other things like this, they're absolute objective truths. Those absolute objective truths are what are required in order to bring about a redemption for the nations first. The answer to this is because the nations are rooted in the grade called Tohu. And Tohu is above the world of Tikkun. The world of Tikkun in the process of emanation comes after the world of Tohu. Our sages tell us that the nations are rooted in Tohu. Tohu is one of the reasons, one of the interpretations of this, tohu is void. And unfortunately, that's what ends up happening with a lot of the philosophical pursuits and so on and so forth. It just renders everything void. But the tikkun that has to occur there is what came before tohu. And what came before tohu was the very light of the illimitable itself, which existed within a set form of parameters. As I've written and stated, he wraps himself in light. The word or light, is the same numerical value as Ein Sof, infinity, the illimitable. And so when it says that he wraps himself in infinity, or he wraps himself in the light, it's that light, as I've explained, is Et HaOr, which is the Aleph through Tav, the Lashon HaKodesh, the language he used to create existence with. So therefore, in order to get to these objective truths, we need to go through and navigate by means of the letters, which is what most of Sefer YIRAH is entirely dedicated to expounding upon, that particular thing. And those things are what are for the nations, because it says this is the Torah you'll put before Israel, because the matter of the Torah is a complex matter. The Torah itself is a complex matter, but Eloh separates from Shin is not a complex matter. And this is the secret of the revelation of letters, because the letters are more primordial than the Torah, because the Torah is formed by words, and words are only an amalgamation of letters. Letters are superior to words. Without letters, there are no words. And so then, therefore, without the letters, there's no Torah. And the letters are the very malbush of infinity, because it's written, he wraps himself in light. In Et HaOr, I explained the word or light is the same value as infinity. Ein Sof. And Et is the way in which infinity has defined its own parameters, which we call restriction, simsum, or limitations. And where it is avodah zarah for us to apply limitations onto God, it is not avodah zarah to analyze the limits that God has placed in within himself. That is to say, those objective laws, which are the parameters of reality, those objective truths, which are the limits of his own placement. We are allowed to analyze through those. And that's why it's written, what can I take as a witness to you and what can I liken to you? And it was never a question, because there's no question marks in Hebrew language. It was a statement. And it is as it is written, I call heaven and earth to bear witness against you this day, because earth is the witness and likeness to God. Thus the Zohar says in book 1, I will call what as a witness to you each and every day. What meaning reality. Reality is the witness and likeness of God. Why? Because reality is what has been actualized from the will of infinity. Potential to actualization. What is manifest is actualization. Therefore, reality is the witness and likeness of God, because it is the direct byproduct and emanation from his will and his potential, which is the entire purpose of creation. So it says at the end, it says, they were therefore before there reigned any king over the children of Israel, for the time had not come for the kingdom of heaven to rule and join hands with the children of Israel. Therefore he said, let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant. This is an incredible thing. So why is Yaakov identifying himself as a servant underneath Esav? And why is it saying the heaven and the earth? And there's a great mystery behind this. Remember, Israel is rooted ultimately in Malkut, whose real identity and root is Kether. And that is a far higher level than the constructive worlds of Tohu, which this is referring to. But that illumination does not occur until the end, when the rectification of Malkuth's vessels come into its completion, because the nations will realize that it is specifically the Lashon HaKodesh, and specifically for the secrets of the Torah, that these objective truths are brought into reality. And I've given an example. A basic example of this is, let the waters under the heaven be gathered to one place. Heaven refers to the sphere of Tiferet. Under the heaven refers to Netak and Hod, which are underneath the sphere of Tiferet, called heaven. Gathered to one place is a sphere of Yisod. So where it's written, let the waters under the heaven be gathered to one place, it means Yisod. What is Yisod of the face? It is the mouth. And so water gathers here. It is the reason we salivate. And the yesod of the body is the reproductive organ. This is the reason why we urinate, because the water gathers to this. This is the level of Atzilistic Torah, because this is an objective fact. Who will argue that water gathers into your mouth and that you salivate? And who will argue that you urinate and water gathers to the reproductive organ, which is yesod? It's the same secret behind why the creation of the man occurs on day 6, because again, day 6 is the 6th Sphira, yesod. And being yesod is the reproductive organ. What person is going to argue that every man and female, Adam, he created them, Zakar Vanukva, male and female, emanates and is created through the reproductive organ? There's no arguing that. It's the same thing as that you guys have been instructed that the left column is red and the right column is white. This is the secret of flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. Flesh is red and bone is white. The flesh from the left side, whose top is Bina, as we learned, which produces that redness I just described, is from the partuf called Ima, meaning mother. And who will argue that every female produces red from their reproductive organ? It would be an absurdity. The same thing likeness with Chachma, which is called Abba, or father, or the male, which produces white. And the secret is, wisdom gives life to its possessor. Not only does the male produce white, which is called Levin or Livna, the whiteness of the sphere of Chachma, but it's also the quality of life. This teaches that the whiteness that the man produces gives life. This refers to semen, which is a living substance and is white. These are absolutes. These are objective facts. It doesn't matter how anyone feels about it. They can argue up and down and cry about it all they want. It does nothing to change reality, because real truth cannot be subjective in any kind of way. Because if it is subjective, it's not truth. Subjective truth is not objective truth. Subjective fact is not objective fact. Not interested in subjective facts, only interested in objective facts. It's the same thing with the center column of the tree being yellow. What is the center column being yellow? We know that man is a tree. Therefore, the center of the human body produces yellow. Do you pee yellow? Is your stomach acid yellow? The phlegm in your lungs, is that yellow? Is your teeth plaque yellow? Your boogers, your earwax, your eye crust? This is objective fact. This is objective fact. To argue against it is futile. And these are that levels of Atzil, of emanation, of Atzilus. And this is what is written. Israel is to be a light to the nations. What does it mean to be a light to the nations? It means to reveal Raz, the secret, which has the value of the word light, of infinity, which is the same value as the word light. Because this is the correction and tikkun of the nations. Because you may not understand, many of you may not understand the depths and intricacies of the Torah, because it's written, this is the Torah you'll place before Israel. For most, it confounds the neshama. What are the kings of Edom? What do you mean these kalim? What are these vessels? You can't really make heads or tails on any of these things outside of the parameters of the Torah, but you can admit you salivate in your mouth, and you can admit that you urinate and the water gathers there. You can admit that every female produces red and every male produces white. You can admit that the center of your body produces yellow, because that is a level above. That level in the Atzil, and Atzilus is how they become rectified. It's through objective facts, through objective truth. And this is why the Torah in no place does it say to have faith or belief. Because faith and belief, what good does that have for God? Why would God need faith or belief at all? That's why the word faith and belief don't appear in the Torah at all. Because faith and belief have nothing to do with objective truth. If you have to have faith and belief in it, it's subjective already. There's no point in having faith and belief. That only reinforces the idea of a subjective existence, which is not what we exist inside of. Instead, it says, Vayadat Hashem, you will have knowledge of God. You will know that I am the Lord. And that word da'as is in the most actualized sense in terms of intellect. It is in the term of intelligence. Da'as is the term for knowledge in the qualified sense of intellectual understanding. Right? This is something that stands in stark and staunch contrast to philosophical idea, because philosophy will tell you that God is not knowable, and other religions will tell you that God is not knowable. But the Torah tells us something that stands in staunch contrast to those ideas, which is Vayadat et Hashem, you will know that I am God. And not only will you know that I am the Lord, but it says Vayadat, and you will know et, the 22 letters, which are God. Because through those 22 letters, one comes to understand the order of things. And the philosophers make a grievous mistake. The grievous mistake that they make is they separate by worshiping the unmanifested God, which is called the Ain, the secret of why Daniel said all the nations are counted as Ain and less than Ain, or they're all counted as nothing and less than nothing, is because they're worshiping the unmanifested potential, divorcing and devoiding the manifestation, the actualization of that potential, which is reality around us, as if somehow reality around us, which is the actualized potential, is somehow not God, when it is God. And thus, by understanding the actualization of the reality around us, we can thus know things about God, which is the very purpose of our existence, and the exact reason why it says Vayadat Hashem, that you will have knowledge of God. Because reality is the actualization of his will, of his potential. And therefore, it is his likeness. As it is written, what can I take as a witness to you, and what can I liken to you? Reality is the witness to God, because reality is the actualization of his potential. This is the witness. The term witness, edut, is also a saruf of the word da'at, knowledge. Knowledge. It contains the same letters in a different arrangement as the word knowledge. Why? Because his knowledge is a witness to this matter. That's why it says, "And the earth is filled with his glory." The word kavod has a numerical value of 32. It means the 22 letters in the 10 sfirot. So, this is why it says in that day, the earth will be filled with das, knowledge. So it ends with, after these grades are perfected, the kingdom of heaven will be aroused to rule over the lower beings. Its rulership shall start with Benjamin, the youngest of all the tribes, namely with Saul, who is the tribe of Benjamin. And this is the meaning of the verse, there's Benjamin, the youngest, ruling them. The kingdom began to take root in him later, coming into its own place, to King David, to be established and to never depart. So the kingdom of heaven comes in at that point, because the reality is the very first heaven and earth was created in the primordial darkness. And this is why it says, Vayomer Elohim Yehior Veyehior. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. But the very first verse says, Bereshis bara Elohim et hashamayim v'haaretz. And God, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. But it does not say there was light. And the term Vayomer Elohim Yehior Veyehior, God said, let there be light, and there was light, is only after the creation of that heaven and earth. Because that heaven is not what you think it is. And that earth was in the darkness. And so there's a key of what is being said here, because the nature of the heaven has to transform. This is why the word heaven, hashemayim, is made out of the two words esh and mayim, fire and water. And this is exactly why our sages said there was a machloches, a disagreement, a separation, a war in heaven. What was the war in heaven? What was the separation in heaven? In the same way that fire is that water is an antithesis to fire. And fire is ultimately an antithesis to water. Because if I put water in a pot and place it on top of fire, it evaporates. And if I take fire and throw water on it, it extinguishes. And so the word hashemayim, the heaven, being formed out of esh, fire, and mayim, water, tells you that they're antithetical to each other. This is the same roots of the ZOHAR and the Yetzer Tov, which has been explained at great lengths, and has to deal with why it says he makes the wind his messengers, and the second part of it, which are flaming ministers. And those flaming ministers has to deal with the type of melachim that are formed specifically from that fire. So this is going to bring us to the conclusion. There are very few passages that deal with the matters of the kings of Edom outside of the Yitro Rabbah and Yitro Zuta. This is going to take place in book 17 and book 22. It's also hinted at and alluded to in Sefer Desnudata, which is in book 11. We are in book 5. There's a portion in the Zohar in which it says, And everything up until here has been in generality, and now Sitra Torah, secret Torah. Everything from this point will be explained in different language. And so as we're in book 5, the Zohar is still using occultated language. It is still veiled language, describing only in generalities the deepest of secrets. And it's only until we get 12 books later will it finally begin to expound the matters of the kings in a more qualified sense of what it's really had intended to speak on. But nonetheless, the goal here was to bring you up to speed onto what it's wishing to convey and removing it from its generality and provide the specifics, at least within the context of the passage. As David HaMelech said, open my eyes that I may behold the wonders of your Torah. Amen, everybody. Shalom and salam.
Amen.
Shalom, Berkism.